Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 baseball video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10, or technically 10 MLB deaths that shocked the world. I'm not really ranking them because it wouldn't be fair to rank these deaths, but these deaths have had a massive impact. Of course, rocking the Blue Jays jersey and all that. So, the most notable deaths of all time and all that. Well, I kind of did have a 10 to 1 in a sense. But here we go. Number 10, in a sense, is Tyler Skaggs. Tyler Skaggs was a decent pitcher for the Angels, but in 2019, before a game, he was found in a hotel room dead of a heart attack. So in 2019, so that's what happened. Unfortunately, months later, it was found out that an Angels team doctor gave him some medication that Skaggs mishandled. It was an accidental overdose, yes, but it was harsh that the Angels trader kind of did that to him. So they made changes to the drug policies of giving up the medication and all that. Major death number 2 is Lyman Bostock. So Lyman Bostock was this player for the Minnesota Twins that was pretty good and could bat over 300. And it was pretty impressive what he could do. So much so, he had a free agent deal with the Angels. Or is it the other way around? I gotta find out. I have a funny feeling it's the other way around. Yeah, he played for the Twins then the Angels. Yeah, I was right. Twins then Angels. So yeah, he was so bad in the first month of April, he decided to give up all his money, give up his check, saying I didn't deserve it. The Angels brash said no, and so Bostock gave his money to charity. Fortunately, though, he bounced back quickly. And by September, he was batting over 300. In a series between the Angels and the White Sox, he took an, like after a afternoon game at Comiskey Park, he went to his own stomping grounds in Indiana to see his family. Unfortunately, though, he would be cut down by a bullet, by a gun. But it was not intended for Lyman Bostock. The guy who shot Bostock actually had what they call case of mistaken identity. And, Bostock was just an innocent bystander and all that. It was just shocking to see that death the way it was. Death number 3 is Oscar Taveras. Oscar Taveras was a pretty good prospect for the St. Louis Cardinals. He even hit a home run during the 2014 NLCS. Unfortunately for Taveras, he would be cut down in a car accident in the Dominican Republic just a month and a half after his death, after his job in the playoffs. So it was just hard to see. Also, like Yuleni Ventura, he was a pretty good pitcher for Kansas City, but he got gunned down by a car accident too. Number 4 is Daryl Kyle. Daryl Kyle was the star pitcher for many teams, including Houston, which he threw a no-hitter against the Mets in 1993. He also went to Colorado and actually thrived in the mile-high air, which most pitchers couldn't. Then St. Louis picked him up, and St. Louis liked him so much. So anyhow, Daryl Kyle pitched 1 week on a Tuesday and did quite well. The Cardinals were reeling after the legendary Jack Buck died of age-related stuff. And of course, Jack Buck gave that 9/11 poem. But yeah, the Cardinals player died of a heart attack. So yeah, on the Tuesday. And then on the Saturday, before a big Cardinals Cubs game that was going to be televised across the nation, in a sense, the Fox game of the week, the game had to be postponed. They found out because, well, in the third inning, it was released that Daryl Kyle died of a heart attack in his hotel room. He did have some heart problems and health issues, but he kind of hid them. Derek Kyle died at age 33 years old, which was shocking. He left three kids behind, and they had to cancel the Cardinals Cubs game. They would play the next day on a Sunday night on ESPN because Daryl would have wanted them to play. So the Cardinals and Cubs played that Sunday night game. I think the Cardinals won, but the Cubs were so understanding that they said that there would be no like flashy things, like no organ music and all that. It just basically played in silence and all that, to pay homage to the Cardinals and all that. Cardinals went to the playoffs in 2002 and would always have Daryl Kyle's number 57 on hand with their jersey. So death number 5 is Steve Owen with Tim Cruz. Cleveland was going through a renaissance. Late 80s, they sucked. In the 90s, they were decent. They were getting better and better. By spring training 93, people thought Cleveland was going to make a run for it. And of course, this was the last year that not Memorial Stadium, Municipal Stadium, Cleveland Municipal Stadium would be used for the Indians before moving to Jacobs Field in 94. But Cleveland would suffer massively. During spring training, in a boating accident, they would lose two pitchers and almost lost another. Steve Owen was one of the best closers in Cleveland history and all that. He went to the All Star game the previous year. And Tim Cruz was this guy that they picked up from the Dodgers in the bullpen. Unfortunately, though, Olin Cruz and also Bobby Ojeda, who found his way from the Mets to Cleveland, were in an accident in which they screwed up their boat and all that. Alcohol was not really a factor. They just flew in too much and hit the pier and all that, and killed Olin and Cruz and injured Ojeda. Cleveland was devastated and all that. I would be too. Speaking of boating accidents, that's number 6, and that's Jose Fernandez. Jose Fernandez was a great pitcher for the Miami Marlins. Everyone thought he was going to be the best Marlins pitcher ever, taking it out away from Kevin Brown, if you will. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, he was good. He could swing the bat. He hit a few home runs, and he had like great strikeouts. The day before his accident in 2016, he was going to be a father and all that. So he decided to go boating with some friends. Unfortunately, though, alcohol was a factor, and the boat sped too fast and hit the pier and killed Jose Fernandez instantly. The young star from Cuba passed away. It was just terrible. His career was so promising. It was so bad that the Marlins canceled their game against the Braves, understandably, on that Sunday. I remember actually watching MLB Network that day when Jose Fernandez died, and found I found out about Jose Fernandez like live at 9 in the morning, and I nearly dropped my cereal and all that in shock. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, that was just terrible. The Marlins played the next day against the Mets, and Dee Gordon, who was not known for his home run power, hit the home run to right field and all that. And, everyone wore Fernandez number 16 and all that. So, yeah, it was big that Dee Gordon hit that home run. I forgot to mention about Tyler Skaggs is that, the first home game after Skaggs' death, they actually threw a combined no hitter against the Mariners. But yeah, it was big, you know, and the Marlins couldn't really recover. Next up, number 7, right? Yeah, number 7, Furman Munson. Furman Munson was this big catcher. He was the Yankees captain, if you will. He was there from 1965 onwards, and the Yankees really could trust him. Number 15, he could hit the ball. He could play catcher with the best of them. And then after a certain day, on a day off, he decided to head to Dayton, Ohio, and practice his plane pilot's license. So he was a decent pilot. Unfortunately, though, the third time he took off at the airport in Dayton, he suffered some problems and crashed alongside his co-pilot. They were both found instantaneously. It was just shocking. I mean, the Yankees went through the motions. They had to play a tough 3-game series. I can't remember who they played against, but they played that, even though they could have easily canceled the game the next day, and it would have been understandable. And then on Monday Night Baseball against the Baltimore Orioles, when Bobby Mercer made the eulogy for Furman Munson at his ceremony, Mercer would hit get two massive hits, including one in the bottom of the ninth to beat the Orioles and give the Yankees the win. The Yankees seemed to not do the same with the catching game until possibly Posada. I'm probably wrong, but yeah, it just left a big hole. They would keep Munson's locker untouched for years. Number 8 is Ray Chapman. Ray Chapman became the only player to die as a direct result of an on field injury. I talked about this in my top 10 MLB injuries of all time, but this is a depth. So Ray Chapman was a star shortstop for the Cleveland Indians who were making a run for the 1920 AL pennant. Of course, back then you had to win the AL or NL to get to the World Series. No other playoffs necessary. And then he was playing in August at the Polo Grounds against the Yankees. Now the Yankees had the Polo Grounds to share with the Giants until Yankee Stadium was built in 1923. So anyway, Carl Mays, known for a spitball, threw a ball that ricocheted off Chapman's head so much so that the sound of the crack, Mays thought that it hit Chapman's glove and bat and threw it to first base, but no, it hit his head. The ball was dirtied and scuffed, and not a lot of balls were taken out of play and all that. And Mays threw the spitball, and obviously Chapman couldn't really see the ball because of how dark it kind of was. So anyway, Chapman would go through surgery, but didn't recover from it, and Cleveland was just shocked. But Cleveland had a motive to play for the World Series, and they did because of Ray Chapman's death. They won the World Series in 1920. His replacement, Joe Sewell, was actually so good. He wasn't really the best hitter of there, but Joe Sewell is one of the most famous players for not striking out. He has one of the he's one of the I think top 5 for career at bats per strikeout, meaning that you rarely struck that guy out. But Cleveland, it was just harsh on them. And Major League Baseball changed the rule saying that balls would be taken out of play much more often or switched in a sense. And you couldn't dirty the ball, scuff the ball, and all that. And also, the spitball would be banned. But, they grandfathered that clause, meaning that whoever was known for throwing spitball can throw the spitball for the rest of their careers. It's just the new players couldn't. Impactful death number 9 is Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig was the epitome of coming in every day. Wally Pipp got hurt in 1925, and Lou Gehrig took his first base spot and never gave it back. Gehrig had some memorable seasons, including 1927 part of Murderers Row, batting 4th behind Babe Ruth. That's why Ruth wore number 3 and Gehrig number 4 when uniform numbers came out. So yeah, you couldn't get if you could walk Ruth, you would have to go through Gehrig and all that. Gehrig was a good hitter, but by 1939 he was struggling mightily. So he decided to do the one thing possible, and he took himself out of the game May 2nd, 1939 in Detroit. 2,130 career complete consecutive games. That's amazing. To put that in perspective, it's more than 10 seasons. 10 seasons is 1,620. And of course, Gehrig played in an era with 154 games in a season, not 162 like we do now. But yeah, Lou Gehrig, had problems. He went to the Mayo Clinic. They found out that he would have ALS, and basically everything looked bad. Gehrig was told that he could beat this thing. His job will be back waiting for him. Unfortunately, though, it never happened. But Gehrig became a parole officer in the New York City Council. So, Gehrig would make these rulings and all that. He was impressed. He knew his time had come and all that. Well, Gehrig's widow knew that Gehrig was going to die within 2 years. And that's what happened. In 1941, he died of ALS, now called Lou Gehrig's disease. However, what's even more impressive was his 4th of July 1939 speech when he said, "Today I'm the luckiest person on the face of the earth." He sure was. And at number 10, the 10th and final death is Roberto Clemente. Roberto Clemente was this great player coming up from the Montreal Royals in the International League to Brooklyn to be a Dodger. However, the Dodgers let him go and Pittsburgh snatched him up. Pittsburgh would make a good example. Robbie would be big. It's actually said that in the two World Series he was in, 1960 and 1971, which both won 7 games, he had hit safely in all 14 of them. He was just that damn good and all that. The 60s would be when he would break out and all that. In the early 70s, he was just a star for Pittsburgh. In fact, on the final day of the season, September 30th, against the New York Mets and John Madlock, he wrapped a double at Three Rivers to get to hit number 3,000, which was amazing and all that. Unfortunately, though, that would be his last major league hit. On December 31st, 1972, while flying aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua, the plane hit a bump and crashed into the Atlantic. His body was not really recovered. I don't think it was ever recovered. The problem was that the humanitarian aid was too much for the plane to hold. So, that was just massively tragic. And all that. Clemente showed how much of a guy he really was with, his humanitarian work and all that. That's the name of the MLB's humanitarian award. It's not the Walter Payton Man of the Year. It's the Roberto Clemente Award. Pittsburgh went into massive mourning, and on opening day 1973, they retired his number 21 in view of his mother, his wife, and their 3 sons, who didn't take up Major League Baseball after him, I guess. Like, it was just shocking that Pittsburgh would fall flat. And who knows how many seasons Clemente would have had after 1972. But he died doing something heroic, trying to help Nicaragua with their earthquake supplies. So, anyway, farewell to these 10 legends of the game. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.